ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Cats and Bolts podcast, the number one in Florida. Welcome. 3, 2, 1.
We got it. That's the best producer in the business, Ben Castro, although the other Ben, Benny Cobbs, thinks you're broken, Ben. I don't know about that, but no, he's all ours. Ben Castro, and it's Rod and Sarina bringing you Florida's favorite hockey show, as the man said, voted the fastest growing podcast here, broadcasting from Podcast Junkie Studios in Boca Raton. It's a very special edition. It's what we're calling the Four Nations Faceoff edition, and there's not much doubt what the hosts are cheering for in the NHL-sponsored four-team tournament, which is facing off this week in Montreal, switching to Boston next week. And when I told you earlier today that this is what we were going to be talking about, what did you think?
I wasn't surprised. I mean, this is probably what we should be talking about because, let's be honest, there's no NHL hockey for 2 weeks. What else are we going to talk about?
Well, we could find something, but I figured it might have made you happy because these types of tournaments, which I have a lot of statistical data on, have provided a lot of great memories over the years.
They have. I feel like this is kind of a new tournament, though. This is a whole new thing. And I was talking to my dad on the phone this morning, and he was like, I said to him, I'm like, I don't feel like people are really super excited about it yet. He's like, I'm not. He's like, and let me tell you why. He's like, I just feel like it's going to be like an all-star game, which is obviously boring. And I said, well, as an Oilers fan and a Connor McDavid fan, there's nobody more possessed right now to win a Stanley Cup than Connor McDavid. And if a tournament like this hurts him or any other player on a Stanley Cup contending team, you got a lot of issues that you're going to have to face having a tournament like this in the middle of the season. So I don't know if it's that from the past, we've had tournaments that they play them in the summer right before the season starts. It's a little different. So this is kind of a new thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm getting a bang out of the reaction of all of this. A lot of people don't understand what it is. And when you work in the sport, like when I was only doing hockey, you just think inside this vacuum. You think the whole world's into it. You don't realize a lot of people aren't. And the football people think that the whole world's into what they're into. My point is the hockey people, and I think a lot of our viewers and fans are into this tournament. You might not know exactly what it is yet, but once it gets going here, I think that you will be excited about it. Thursday night, the USA takes on Finland. It opens with Canada versus Sweden. But here's the thing. I took the liberty of writing down a little bit of the history. You know it, but just to tell everybody. For instance, Ben would have no clue what we're talking about. The Four Nations Face-Off, sponsored by the National Hockey League, is a tournament comprised of USA, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. It's the 9th tournament, Sarina, like this. And if you already know this, don't interrupt. The Canada Cup, there was 5 of them. 1976, 1981, 1984, 1987, my personal favorite, 87, 1991. Those were all called the Canada Cups. And then it became the World Cup. 1996, 2004, 2016. The USA has won it once in 1996, and the only other time Canada didn't win it was 1981. Russia won it, the Soviet Union. I feel like as Canada just invites it, expecting to win it every year. What are your thoughts on the history of this tournament?
Well, I think that the NHL said we have to do something because we haven't had an international tournament like this that showcases all of the best players in the world. Like John Cooper said today, Connor McDavid's been playing in the league for 10 years. This is the first time we get to see him internationally, which is almost a disservice as for his talents. But, when it was the Canada Cup, of course, like Canada was in control of everything, right? And you knew it wasn't going to stay the Canada Cup forever. As soon as Gary Bettman got in there, things started, we can't do that. We got to call it the World Cup. But this is the first time, like I said, that it's been happening in the middle of the season. So I feel like it's just going to, I feel like it's so weird. It's like, goes back to my argument at the start of the year when I'm like, why do you have the Florida traveling to Finland in the middle of the year to play? It's not fair for the players. And I feel that way right now. You've got players that are on a 2-week pause and then other players who aren't. But as far as that's concerned, it's like, other nations are obviously becoming more talented. I don't think that when you think about back in the days of the 76 and the 81 Canada Cup, there were virtually no Swedes and Finns playing in the National Hockey League at that time. And obviously not that many Americans as well. And the league has opened up with guys like Borje Salming coming from Sweden and kind of opening the doors, and the Russians opening the doors for the international play. So now you have a lot more players that are playing at the same level. So I think that to me is the major difference in this tournament from what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, and the thing, like, I guess what I was trying to get out is, it's like Canada hosted this tournament, but it only invited countries they knew it could beat, because it's won it 6 of 8 times. This is the 9th. But just so you know, for the winners, like back in 1996, because we're sitting here in the USA, the Americans won it. Brian Leetch was their captain. Ron Wilson was their coach. They beat Canada. Wayne Gretzky was Canada's captain. Glenn Sather was Canada's coach. Gretzky was the captain of Canada in 91, 87, 84. And before that, Larry Robinson. They should have called it the Gretzky tournament, now that I think about it.
Realistically, yeah.
When the Russians won it in 1981, Valery Vasilev was the captain of Russia who won it. Viktor Tikhonov was the head coach for Russia. And Canada's captain was Ben's buddy, Denny Potvin. Just so you know, yeah. But he doesn't know what to say
Ben
to
just
that.
woke up.
Yeah, Ben, yeah, exactly.
The thing is, though, like, if you look at, like, the 96 World Cup when the U.S. won, that was a very close. Mike Richter stood on his head for the Americans in net. And even the 87 Canada Cup, that was a strong Russian team that Canada had a really hard time beating in 87. So maybe they were just inviting, I don't know, but there were a lot of the Russians have always been strong. That's the thing. So you can't count them out, but obviously they've been canceled. So they're not coming to this tournament.
What's interesting also, I mean, you can't call it the World Cup because the world's not there. You know, I guess that's the reason why they're calling it the Four Nations Faceoff. I have not seen an explanation as to why not only Russia's not there, but the Czechs and the Slovaks and the Latvians, maybe they feel that they're not big enough countries to ice a team competitively. I don't know.
Potentially, but I really don't know if that's a valid argument because they do it every other tournament. And again, I think that because it's in the middle of the season, you can't have like 8 teams involved in a tournament. It's just too much hockey. I think they just said, we want to do a round robin format, have this happen. Every team's only going to play like 4 games at the most or whatever it happens. I think it's 4 games at the most. So just bang it out. Not sure why they're doing it in the middle of the thing, but
no, well, and for any baseball fans that are watching, you're familiar with the World Baseball Classic. This is like the hockey version of that, but even they do that in the off season or leading up to the regular season, right? It's before the season.
It's always, but there's more teams.
Yeah.
You know, this is such a bizarre, I guess it doesn't even equate. I was going to say like in the English Premier League in soccer, they have like different cups that happen during the season, whatever. It's a completely different format, but those guys only play 1 game per week. Teams are playing 2-3 games a week.
I will say this, and again, we're cheering for Canada. We're both Canadians. We will always cheer for Canada, and I believe you think Canada is going to win this. I believe Canada is going to win this. They're the betting favorite at BetMGM to win it. But a good friend of ours named Stephen Ellis from the show Daily Faceoff in Toronto, Sarina met him at the World Juniors in Edmonton in 2022. He said this is the best USA team ever assembled. So for the benefit of the majority of our viewers, which are American, what are their chances that they will win this thing? Because I think 96, that was Chelios, Medano, Roenick, Kachuk. My God, how could this be better?
It's not. No. It's not. Now, I'm not saying that every single team that's in this Four Nations Cup has the chance to win because anybody can lose on any given day. But to say that this is the best American team, people are talking out of their ass. You clearly didn't watch back then. I mean, guys like Chris Chelios and Mike Richter and anybody that we mentioned, I mean, those guys are in the Hall of Fame. Not saying that the players now aren't in the Hall of Fame, but when you look at the American roster, there's a lot of good hockey players on that roster, but I can't think of one American that was left off the roster that there could be an argument for, no, that guy should be on the team. I think they picked the players that they had to work with. They took them all because they have a lot of good players that are capable of playing, and off you go. When you compare that to Canada, the depth in Canada, there's arguments about, whether or not Scheifele should be on the team and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that in a sec. But do I think this is the best American team ever assembled? Absolutely not. Even when the Americans lost at the Olympics in Nagano, I think it was, they had a pretty good team. They had a lot of those same guys. You got the Jeremy Roenick's. Those guys were superstars on their respective teams.
I think there's a chance that the USA is a more talented team when you look at the rosters. It's pretty damn good. But the one thing about Canada, who has won this tournament 6 of 8 times, I believe they'll be a better team. It's the difference of how they play. And you know what I'm getting at.
Oh, 100%. Canadians play as a team, always have, always will. And when you look at the top 4 let's say the top 3 forwards and the top defenseman or 2 defensemen on Canada's team, there's not one American that's better than that. Like, I'm sorry, there's not one American that's better than Connor McDavid, Cale Makar on defense, Nathan McKinnon, even Sidney Crosby. I mean, there's just I would not take any of those American players over them. You got guys like Jack Eichel that have a lot of talent. I mean, Jack Eichel is like pure talent. Vincent Trocheck, in my opinion, has pure talent. But you watch the way they play on their teams. They're not team players. I had this discussion with a friend of ours a couple days ago about the Tkachuk brothers. And I said, man, that Brady Tkachuk is something else. And he goes, Brady's better than Matthew. I said, he absolutely is. He goes, but I think Matthew's a little smarter. Fair argument, however you want to see it. But none of those guys are really crushing it on their respective teams. It's different.
Team USA's coach is Mike Sullivan of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Team Canada's coach is John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning. One fun thing I've written down is, what's weird about this? And what I mean is, a guy was watching my daytime talk show in Vancouver, and he wrote in today, and he goes, how am I going to cheer for Brad Marchand? I freaking hate that guy. Since 2011, a guy from Vancouver who Marchand's Bruins beat his Canucks in 2011. That's the fun thing that I think about when I was a kid. The guys you hated, you got to cheer for because they're wearing your country, your leaf.
Listen, if I can cheer for Theoren Fleury at an international event, anybody can do anything, anywhere in the world. So, no, I think he was probably just saying it in jest because everybody.
I don't know if he was saying it. I think he legit hates Brad Marchand.
I mean, maybe, but
yeah.
That was also Vancouver's fault that they lost. So nobody to blame but themselves.
I'm just wondering what other oddities there are. I mean, I would think for not just USA hockey fans in general, seeing the Tkachuks play together is pretty cool. Stuff like this doesn't happen very often.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because this kind of goes back to what I say about hockey fans in Florida. They're Panthers fans or Lightning fans or whatever. They're not general hockey fans. They don't seek out and go, ooh, Ottawa's playing Vancouver tonight. I'm going to watch this because this is going to be a great game. They don't care. They don't watch Brady Tkachuk play. It's different. It's a different mentality. So sure, it's a novelty that the two of them are playing together and everybody's excited to see them play, but there's not too many people who will sit down and watch a doubleheader on a Saturday because they have nothing else to do.
Yeah, I guess. Best goalie in the tournament is the USA, by the way. I don't think there's any doubt about that, Connor Hellebuyck. As a matter of fact, a lot of people, there's betting props out there as to who will be the MVP, and many are saying it's Connor Hellebuyck. Why wouldn't you say? Oh, my God.
What? There's betting on who's going to be the MVP, and they haven't even dropped
surprised?
The puck? Guys.
You could bet on who would be the Super Bowl MVP. What's the difference?
You got to be kidding me.
No. This is just fun stuff. And he is the best goalie going in.
He is, but there's also, when you're betting on the Super Bowl MVP, there's only 2 teams. It's like going to the Stanley Cup final and going, okay, we probably have a pretty good idea who's going to win the Conn Smythe this year, but there's 4 teams. And he's a goaltender. Those are either black or like hit or miss.
It's right? I don't think it'll be Connor Hellebuyck. I actually said it would be Connor McDavid. Just fun things to talk about. You mentioned Florida hockey fans. How do you feel about this? The Panthers have the most players of any team, 8 in this thing. 2 on Canada, 1 on USA, 4 on Finland, and 1 on Sweden. Adds up to 8. The Lightning have 5. Who do you think has 6? It shocked me.
6 is, I forget. I did see it.
The New York Rangers.
Yeah, yes.
A team that hasn't won diddly squat.
Yeah, so that's also an interesting thing because I thought the same thing. If you look at the Panthers, why they have so many players going, and the Rangers, why they have so many players going, I still feel like there's a disconnect in New York that shouldn't be there. They have the talent to play well. So what it shows me about the Panthers organization is they know how to pick team players from the top down. When I say from the top down, from their captain down, they know how to pick team players. Now, having said that, I feel like there are also players in this tournament that have been chosen to play on their respective teams that are probably not the best players in their country. Like, for example, Canada. There's, like I said, about the arguments about Scheifele playing and whoever else. I personally feel like Scheifele is a better player than Cirelli. I feel like he's better than Sam Bennett. I feel like he's, better than a lot of guys on that team. But I know they picked for a team. They picked guys that can play as a team. They picked guys like Sam Bennett because what they're going to do, they're going to put him in front of the net and get in everybody's face. They're not going to use Marchand for that like he typically plays on his own thing. He's too talented. They're going to use him as a goal scorer. It's just they're not going to use Marchand to muck it up. They're going to use a guy like Sam Bennett, and I feel like that's why they chose him. And I'm not arguing with the choice. I'm just saying that there's probably 10 Canadians or 20 Canadians that were probably capable of being on that team that just weren't chosen.
By the way, I can't remember. Did I say there are 2 Panthers on Team Canada? Because that's what it is, Bennett and Reinhart. That's why I don't feel bad sitting here wearing a Canada pullover right now because the Bennett and Reinhart families are cheering for Canada too.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Never.
It's just...
I'll never feel bad for pulling for my country.
Right, international hockey. So that's who we're cheering for. But that is what's fun about it. I will say, is there an upset possible, by the way? Because what everybody's talking about is Canada or USA. USA or Canada, who will win? Any chance somebody sneaks up the middle?
People should never expect that. Again, you just never know. You have to look at the rosters of the Swedes and the Finns. I personally feel like people are underestimating what's going on because you have guys like that play for Sweden, like Arvidsson, Zibanejad up front, that they are strong players. And their defense, in my opinion, the Swedes have the strongest defensemen in the tournament. Finland's no slouch either. Finland and Swedes have good goaltenders too. Yes, obviously, you know how I feel about Connor Hellebuck. We've had the conversation on this show. Who would you pick? Me? Connor Hellebuck. No way. And now, he's held Winnipeg in there a lot. But the Swedes and the Finns, they have good goaltenders as well. So, like I said, anybody can beat anything. I think what's going to happen is in one of the first couple days or like the first kind of little bit of the round robin, there's going to be an upset that rocks the standings. Because there is, when you're playing a 4-team round robin, if you lose one game and it's the wrong game, you can be out. We've watched this at the Memorial Cup for 50 years. You lose the wrong game and you're going to be in trouble. And then you have to win all of them, including, semifinals or whatever.
Mm-hmm. The first week's in Montreal. The second week is in Boston. The $64,000 question is this. The thing that I want to see the most is how much are the players going to try? Because we've heard this for years, decades now. It's not the way it used to be. Those old series used to be wars. And people are asking, is this going to be like the All-Star Game, Sunday skate now, or are they really going to get after it? And I think it's going to be somewhere in between. It's going to be competitive, but it's not going to be a war.
I don't think it's going to be a war because too many players on these teams are saving themselves for the playoffs, and I can't blame them. Like I said, do I want to see Connor McDavid go head first into the corner to chase a puck? Absolutely not, because my priority is seeing my Oilers win, not Canada winning the Four Nations Cup. Of course, I want Canada to win. I always do. I live and breathe it. But I think all of these players are going to be kind of in that situation where, it's a tricky situation to be in. So, no, it's not going to be a war. Again, they're playing it in the middle, right before the playoffs.
Yeah, well, in a way, you wonder why they're doing it at all. other than somebody has said they haven't had international games since 2016.
I feel like
What?
Gary Bettman's like, let me put my fingers in the hat and pull out when we should do this. Oh, the middle of February. Sounds good.
Hang on. It's like that old thing you used to do. Like
Yeah.
what should we do? An all-star game, a hockey, a tournament, or what should we do? They came up with this.
What the hell's that thing
I
called again?
can't remember,
forget.
but it was fun as hell.
Yeah, you flip the
Yeah,
number
we used
up.
to do it in grade school. But we talked about international hockey, and I have written down here memories. Some of my best memories are tournaments like this. I mean, we love the Olympics. We love the World Juniors. I don't care about the World Hockey Championships they play every spring. The Spengler Cup, I've never watched 2 seconds of it every Christmas. I don't watch it. But I love this. I love this tournament. I don't know if it'll recreate the memories of 87, Mario, Mike, and Mr. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the great one. Or 96, which I remember so well because I was hosting a television show on a cable channel. At the exact same time Canada was playing USA in the final, I'm interviewing a third-string quarterback who never got to play on a cable channel. Nobody was watching. It scarred me. But still, I remember this tourney. What memories do you have of these tourneys gone by? Or am I the only one?
No, the 87 Canada Cup. I mean, I remember that final goal as if it was yesterday. And for American viewers who don't know, Mario Lemieux sniped one over the corner for Canada to go ahead in the lead and whatever. And that, at the time, that final was a best-of-3 series. So Canada beat Russia in a best-of-3. It wasn't just a one-game final like this one will be. But also, too, it was not during the season. And what's so interesting to me is that when the World Juniors are on after Christmas during the NHL season, that GMs are like, bop, 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 bop. You're not having our draft pick, even though he's eligible to play at the World Juniors. He ain't going because if he gets hurt, like Alex Lafreniere did, and every Canadian, there's one Canadian kid that gets a traumatic injury every single tournament. And if he's been drafted, the general managers are like, nope. So how is this any different? The general manager, you think Bill Zito is stoked that he's got 8 of his best players playing in this tournament? He's going process of elimination. Someone's going to get hurt. So why?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I saw a Panthers podcaster put out, I think it was this morning, basically praying to baby hockey Jesus that none of the Panthers get hurt. And I'm like, why would you put that out there? It's okay for you. You don't cheer for them. But for this guy, why even put that into the universe?
Well,
You know?
it's because it's a reality, right? Like I said, I don't want to see any guys like Nate McKinnon could physically inflict injury on anybody he wants to, probably other than Victor Hedman, by the sheer speed and force that he skates. I don't know any player that skates with more force than Nate McKinnon. He's an absolute freight train out there. But he's not going to go out. Nobody's going to go out and attempt to injure anybody. This isn't the 72 Summit Series where someone's going to get Bobby Clarked. It's not going to happen, right? It's just not. But and here's why. The general managers around the NHL are going to have to answer to each other if one of their players injures somebody else's player, because it is going to go back. It's an NHL sanctioned event. It's going to fall back.
2 points and then we're done. The funny part of all this, and it wasn't me that came up with it, was whoever wins this is going to have to deal with you didn't play Russia because Russia wasn't there. Russia's, I would agree, probably the best team.
Let me guess. A Canadian said that.
I can't even remember because I've heard it
Probably.
a lot. I heard it in Chicago when we were there. Some of the guys brought it up in this alumni suite we were in. You know that'll come up, right? Congrats on winning, but you didn't play Russia.
Guys, that's not even a point. Why is that even a thing? They're not going. They haven't been going to events for years because they're shitty. They're a shitty country. So you know what? You got to pay the piper for that. Too bad.
What has it been? 3-4 years?
No, I think it's been longer than that. They weren't at the last 2 Olympics, I think. The last Olympics for sure. They haven't played at the World Juniors.
They've been held out of the
3-4
World
years.
Juniors since...
Well, 2022, they didn't play.
Right. So I want to say since 2021. But I'm just, look, you understand there's been like a ghost roster done up for Russia had they been in it. Dear God. The goaltenders alone are Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, and Shesterkin. And then go from there, Panarin, Ovechkin, Malkin. I mean, come on. They would win this thing.
I don't agree. I don't agree.
Well,
They're not stronger than Canada. They're not. But would they have a fair fight? Oh, you bet your ass they would. But again, it's like Panarin's been shit in the bed anyway. He's been absolutely useless. We've seen Ovi play in international competition that has not been flattering to his talent levels. So, I mean, I'm not wasting any more breath on it because they're not going. So why are we even talking about it?
Because I think it's hockey, and again, these are things that we talk about, and it sure would be fun to see. And defense wins, which reminds me, this is a tournament format, and this is part of the reason why I think Connor Bedard is not there for Canada. Number one, John Cooper doesn't think he's ready. Number two, I'm really impressed that the NHL didn't force Canada to put him on their roster for marketing reasons. You know what I mean? That tells me that they're not meddling. I've seen that kind of thing happen before. But they can't have a defensive lapse in a short tournament. It could cost you a game, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What?
Oh, nothing. I was like, are we going down that whole
No,
road today?
but I just think it's important to point out, we talk about Connor Bedard a lot on this show, and he's not in the tournament. He will be in the next 20 years of tournaments, but he's not in this one. And I guess lastly, is this back to the NHL. The Panthers and Lightning are rolling into the break. The Lightning have won 4 in a row. The Panthers are first place in the Atlantic Division, so it should be fun once they reconvene after 2 weeks. Those players that aren't in this are getting a real nice break, aren't they? A real nice rest.
Like I said, a 2-week break. If this is going to prove, it's not quite close enough to the playoffs yet that I think it's really going to matter. But if you get a 2-week break on your legs, or you're battling some type of injury and you have a 2-week break from it, that's a completely different game than the other series where you play all year, you head into the playoffs, you're playing 9 months straight of hockey. It's not the case right now.
That's the thing, is in a way I feel bad for those stars like Barkov and Reinhart and them that have played so much hockey. They do not get a break, which I'm sure they're not getting paid for this, right?
I would suspect not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they are. Now, an honor to play for your country, all of that is true. But my God, I'm sure they would have loved to have had a rest too. But those are all of our points. I want Ben, bring yourself on, please, if you don't mind, producer Ben. How would you explain to somebody who just landed from Mars what this tournament is that's starting this week? Did you learn anything over the last 26 minutes?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I was taking a bunch of notes. I was also doing some other stuff, but it seems like it's the best of all of the teams, and they're coming to hash it out, kind of thing.
You couldn't explain it better than that. What are we sitting here for?
Ben's going to be in this chair next time.
I know.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, Ben. Hey, before we let him go, if anybody's wanting to start a podcast, they should come here, right? Well, give yourself a little plug for Podcast Junkies.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody is in the area wanting to start a podcast, here at Podcast Junkies, we are a turnkey podcast studio. Come on in and be more than happy to be a producer for you. Take care of you guys and have some coffee.
And throw great parties.
Yeah, throw some great parties.
There's a lot of good stuff here. There are some really good parties, good food. There's a beautiful coffee machine here. I mean, how could we forget about the coffee?
Industrial
coffee
size that would feed an army.
We got some snacks.
Yeah, who doesn't love snacks? All right, everybody.
I love snacks.
Thanks for watching. Enjoy the Four Nations Face-Off. We'll see you next week here on Cats and Bolts.
Oh, it was good.